I'm Isabel Cooper, and I've been sabotaging racing pigeon competitions for months. Not because I hate the birds. They're magnificent creatures with navigation skills that put GPS to shame. No. I've been doing it because their judge, Madeline Scott, cost me my commercial pilot license with her testimony about aviation violations I never committed. Damn woman destroyed my livelihood with 3 sentences in federal court. My hot air balloon business was everything until she decided to play righteous witness. Now I survive on weekend tourist flights and the occasional wedding proposal scenario, watching my dreams deflate slower than punctured nylon. The Model UN conference at Greensboro Convention Center should have been neutral territory. I represented France in debates about international airspace regulations. She represented Germany, professional, clean. Until she stood at that podium. Delegate Cooper's position ignores basic safety protocols, Madeline announced, her blue eyes cutting through the assembly hall like searchlights. Perhaps her balloon experience hasn't prepared her for real aviation standards. The room fell silent. Other delegates shifted uncomfortably. I gripped the microphone. Delegate Scott seems confused about the difference between regulatory expertise and personal vendettas. Her brunette hair caught the fluorescent lights as she turned toward me. Facts aren't personal, Delegate Cooper. Neither is professional sabotage. The moderator called for recess, but we kept staring across that space, electricity crackling between us like pre-storm atmosphere. Later, delegates gave us wide berth during coffee breaks. Word spreads fast in small political circles. Avoid the French and German representatives unless you enjoy watching verbal warfare. But Saturday morning changed everything. The Regional Pigeon Racing Championships filled Meadowbrook Park with white trailers and serious-faced handlers. I launched my balloon from the adjacent field, completely legal according to aviation maps. The morning winds carried me east, right into their airspace. Below, hundreds of racing pigeons circled in confusion as my shadow passed over their release point. Handlers shouted. Birds scattered. Madeline Scott stormed across the field, her judging badge glinting in sunlight. Even from my basket I could see fury radiating from her compact frame. Land that thing immediately, she bellowed upward. I pulled the vent cord, beginning descent. Public airspace, Scott. Not during sanctioned races. My basket touched down with a thud. She marched over, those blue eyes blazing with righteous anger. You did this deliberately. Your birds need better training if they can't handle air traffic. She stepped closer, close enough that I caught her perfume, something floral and expensive. These birds represent years of breeding and training, generations of bloodlines. And my balloon represents my livelihood, the one you helped destroy. For a moment something flickered across her face. Doubt, maybe. Or recognition. Then her expression hardened again. File your complaints through proper channels, Cooper. Stop playing games with innocent animals. She turned and walked away, her movements precise and controlled, professional. But I'd seen that flicker. And somehow, watching her retreat across that field, I realized this fight between us had become something more complicated than simple revenge. Something that might be dangerous for both of us. Monday morning, I filed my complaint with the Federal Aviation Authority. Madeline Scott's pigeon operation was requesting exclusive airspace during race weekends. Illegal under current regulations. My 20-page documentation included weather patterns, flight paths, and witness statements. By noon, her counter-complaint hit my inbox. Deliberate interference with sanctioned sporting events topped her list of charges against my balloon operation. She'd included photographs of my flight patterns, timestamps proving I'd crossed into race airspace multiple times this season, and testimony from 3 pigeon handlers claiming I'd intentionally disrupted their events. Professional warfare at its finest. The FAA hearing was scheduled for Thursday. I spent 3 days preparing evidence, cross-referencing flight logs with weather data, building an airtight case against her accusations. Kenneth Lewis presided over our hearing in a cramped office that smelled like stale coffee and bureaucratic desperation. He was mid-40s, soft around the middle, with eyes that lingered too long wherever they shouldn't. Madeline arrived in a navy suit that hugged her curves perfectly, carrying a briefcase that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Professional armor. Ladies, Lewis drawled, leaning back in his chair. Seems we have a territorial dispute. I presented my case first. Flight regulations, public airspace law, constitutional commerce protections. Clean, logical, irrefutable. Madeline's rebuttal was equally sharp. Animal welfare statutes, sporting event protections, economic impact studies for the racing pigeon industry. Louis barely listened, his attention focused on the way Madeline's jacket pulled across her chest when she gestured, how my balloon pilot uniform emphasized my legs. Impressive presentations, he said finally. Very thorough. Something in his tone made me glance at Madeline. Her hands had tightened on her briefcase handle. However, these matters require careful consideration. Perhaps we could discuss this over dinner? Both of you? The suggestion hung in the air like toxic smoke. I don't think that's appropriate, Madeline said carefully. Louis smiled, the expression not reaching his eyes. I find personal discussions often resolve professional conflicts more effectively than formal proceedings. I watched Madeline's composure crack slightly, just a tremor in her jaw, a barely perceptible intake of breath. Her vulnerability surprised me. This woman who'd testified so confidently in federal court was genuinely rattled by one corrupt official's obvious implications. We're not interested in dinner meetings, I said firmly. That's unfortunate. Louis shuffled our files. These cases could drag through appeals for months, years even. Expensive for both parties. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Madeline stood abruptly. We need time to consider our options. Outside the building, we walked in silence until we reached the parking garage. The spring air felt clean after Louis's suffocating office. That was disgusting, she said finally. Welcome to dealing with FAA corruption. She turned toward me, those blue eyes searching my face. You've encountered this before? Why do you think I lost my commercial license? Louis wasn't the hearing officer then, but the system protects its own. For a moment, something passed between us. Not attraction exactly, but recognition. Two women fighting the same rigged game. Coffee? I asked impulsively. She hesitated. I don't think fraternizing with the opposition is wise. Smart woman. But Louis just made us allies whether we like it or not. Something shifted in her expression. Not quite a smile, but close. One coffee, neutral territory. The diner on Market Street was perfect. Public, noisy, impossible for intimate conversation. We sat across from each other in a red vinyl booth, steaming mugs between us like a demilitarized zone. Why pigeons? I asked. My father. She stirred sugar into her coffee. He started racing them when I was 8, said they were nature's perfect navigators. Past tense? Plane crash. 5 years ago. Her voice stayed steady, but her knuckles whitened around the mug. Aviation authorities ruled it pilot error. The pieces clicked. You blame pilots. I blame careless pilots who cut corners. She looked directly at me. Present company excluded, apparently. Thanks for that stunning endorsement. This time she almost smiled. Your flight logs are meticulous. Whatever else you are, you're not careless. We sat in comfortable silence, the dinner rush creating white noise around us. Louis won't let this go, she said finally. No. Men like him never do. Something dangerous flickered between us then. Not attraction, but alliance. The recognition that we were both fighting the same corrupt system, just from different angles. And maybe, just maybe, we were stronger together than apart. Kenneth Louis called me first, 3 days after our official hearing. His voice oozed false concern through my phone speaker while I refueled my balloon basket in the hangar. Isabel, sweetheart, I've been thinking about your case. The endearment made my skin crawl. It's Ms. Cooper, and what about it? These things can get complicated, expensive. But I might be able to expedite a favorable ruling if we could discuss it privately. I'm not interested in private discussions. His laugh was ugly. Everyone's interested when they understand the alternatives. The line went dead. 20 minutes later, Madeline called. He contacted you too? Dinner invitation for personal consultation. Her voice was tight with disgust. Apparently my pigeon operation needs his special attention. We met at Murphy's Tavern that evening, choosing a corner booth where we could watch the exits. Madeline looked exhausted, dark circles under those blue eyes that seemed dimmer than usual. He's done this before, she said quietly. I asked around. 3 other women had cases with him. All dropped their complaints eventually. After his private consultations? After they decided fighting wasn't worth the cost. I ordered whiskey neat. She requested wine, then changed it to bourbon. We can't let him win, I said. Easy to say. Harder when your livelihood depends on his signature. The bartender's television played local news, something about aviation safety inspections. We both watched without really seeing. Tell me about your father's crash, I said, after our second drinks arrived. Madeline's hand stilled on her glass. Why? Because Lewis mentioned aviation accidents during our hearing, just casually. Her face went pale. What did he say exactly? That safety violations can have serious consequences. That family businesses sometimes suffer when regulations aren't followed properly. She was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. Dad's plane went down during a training flight. Mechanical failure, supposedly. But his logbook showed perfect maintenance records. Her voice cracked slightly. The FAA investigator found fabricated evidence of negligence. Who was the investigator? Kenneth Lewis. The pieces fell together with sickening clarity. Lewis had destroyed her father's reputation posthumously, probably to cover someone else's mistake. Now he was threatening us both. Damn, I whispered. He killed my father's memory, made everyone believe Dad was careless. Tears threatened at the corners of her eyes. That's why I became so rigid about safety protocols, why I testified against you initially. You were protecting other pilots. I was protecting everyone from what happened to Dad. Something shifted between us then. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition that we'd both been fighting the same monster from different directions. We need evidence, I said. Against a federal official? That's career suicide. Letting him extort sexual favors is soul suicide. She laughed bitterly. You're right. But how do we prove corruption without destroying ourselves in the process? The tavern was filling with evening drinkers, their conversations creating protective noise around us. I studied Madeline's profile, the determined set of her jaw, the way she held her shoulders despite obvious exhaustion. We work together, I said. Pool our resources. Partners? Temporary alliance against a common enemy. She turned to face me fully, those blue eyes searching mine. You realize if we're caught investigating him, we'll both lose everything? We'll lose everything if we don't. She extended her hand across the table. Partners? When our palms touched, electricity shot through my arm. Not static, something deeper, more dangerous. Her fingers were warm, surprisingly calloused from handling birds. We held the handshake longer than necessary. Isabel, she said softly, my name sounding different in her voice. Madeline. The moment stretched between us, charged with possibility neither of us was ready to acknowledge. Then she pulled her hand away, breaking the spell. Where do we start? His office. After hours. That's breaking and entering. That's gathering evidence of federal corruption. She smiled then, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her. It transformed her face completely, made her look younger, more dangerous. When? Tomorrow night. I'll bring lockpicks. You have lockpicks? My father taught me. Said a good pilot should be able to get out of any locked room. I raised my glass. To temporary partnerships. To dangerous women. We clinked glasses, and for the first time since this whole mess started, I thought we might actually win. Even if winning meant risking everything we'd built separately to build something together. Something that scared me more than Lewis ever could. The Federal Aviation Building stood empty at 11 p.m., its windows dark except for security lights. Madeline met me in the parking garage, dressed in black jeans and a dark sweater that made her look like a beautiful cat burglar. Security cameras? I asked. Disabled. I told you my father was thorough. She pulled a small toolkit from her backpack. Maintenance access is through the loading dock. We moved through shadows, my heart hammering against my ribs. Breaking into a federal building was insane, but Lewis had pushed us past rational choices. The loading dock lock took her 3 minutes to pick. Her fingers moved with surgical precision, blonde hair falling across her face as she concentrated. There, she breathed. Inside, emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows. We found the stairwell, climbed to the 3rd floor where Lewis kept his office. Motion sensors? She whispered. Only on the main floor. His door was newer, more complex. Madeline cursed softly as she worked, sweat beading on her forehead despite the building's air conditioning. Almost got it. The lock clicked open. Lewis's office was bigger than it looked during daylight, filled with filing cabinets and aviation memorabilia. His desk sat near the window, papers scattered across its surface. "You take the desk, I'll handle the files," Madeline said. I powered up his computer while she moved toward the metal cabinets. The screen prompted for a password. I tried variations of his name, his birthday, aviation terms. Nothing. "Isabel." Her voice was tight. "Look at this." She held a thick manila folder labeled Incident Reports Confidential. Inside were investigation summaries, accident reports, witness testimonies, all bearing Lewis's signature. "My father's file is here," she said quietly. The crash report was damning. Mechanical failure caused by improper maintenance, pilot error secondary factor. But clipped to the back were different documents. Original inspection records showing perfect maintenance. Witness statements claiming the plane was sabotaged. A mechanic's report that contradicted the official findings. "He buried the real evidence," I whispered. "Look at the others." 7 more cases, all following the same pattern. Accidents blamed on pilot error when evidence suggested mechanical sabotage or regulatory failures. Each case involved someone who'd challenged FAA decisions or tried to expose corruption. "He's been doing this for years," Madeline said. A sound in the hallway froze us both. Footsteps, getting closer. "Shit," I breathed. We dove toward the supply closet as Lewis's office door rattled. Madeline grabbed the files, I snatched the computer backup drive, and we squeezed into the narrow space between shelves of office supplies. The door opened. A security guard's flashlight beam swept across the office. "Thought I heard something up here." We pressed against each other in the darkness, barely breathing. Madeline's body was warm against mine, her heart racing so fast I could feel it through her sweater. The guard's radio crackled. "3rd floor clear." Probably just the heating system. His footsteps faded down the hallway. We waited 5 more minutes before moving. In that cramped space, with danger just outside, I became hyper-aware of every point where our bodies touched. Her shoulder against my chest, her hair tickling my neck, the way her breathing gradually synchronized with mine. "Clear," she finally whispered. But neither of us moved immediately. The tension between us had shifted from fear to something more dangerous, more electric. Her face was inches from mine in the darkness. "Madeline." "I know." The moment stretched, loaded with possibility. Then she turned away, breaking the spell. "We should go." We gathered the evidence and slipped out through the loading dock. In the parking garage, under fluorescent lights, we examined our haul. "This proves everything," I said. "Lewis has been covering up accidents, destroying evidence, protecting whoever pays him enough. Including the people responsible for my father's death." She looked fierce in the harsh light, her blue eyes burning with righteous anger. "Beautiful and deadly. What's our next move?" "We need to get this to someone incorruptible. FBI, maybe. Or the Inspector General's office. Lewis will know someone broke into his office. We'd better move fast." She loaded the files into her backpack. "My apartment is closer. We can organize everything there." Following her car through empty streets, I realized we'd crossed a line tonight. Not just into criminal activity, but into something deeper. Partnership born of necessity had become trust born of shared danger. And in that supply closet, pressed against each other while our hearts hammered in terrified synchrony, I'd felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Want? Not just physical attraction, though Madeline Scott was undeniably gorgeous, but want for the person beneath the professional armor. The woman who picked locks with her father's tools and risked everything to expose corruption. The woman who'd become my unlikely ally in a war I'd been fighting alone. As I pulled into her driveway, I wondered if she'd felt it too. And what we were going to do about it. Tuesday morning at Greensboro Regional Airport, I was prepping my balloon for a routine maintenance flight when 3 men in expensive suits surrounded me on the tarmac. "Elena Vasquez?" I looked up from checking the propane connections. "You've got the wrong person." The tallest one, with gold teeth and dead eyes, stepped closer. "Don't play games, Elena. You missed your delivery window. I'm Isabel Cooper. I fly tourists, not drugs." He pulled out his phone, showed me a photograph. A dark-haired woman standing next to a hot air balloon identical to mine, Same registration numbers painted on the basket. Your balloon, your face. The photo was expertly doctored, but convincing enough to fool hired thugs. Someone had set me up, using my equipment as cover for drug trafficking. We have your payment, Goldteeth continued. But first, you complete the delivery you missed last week. I don't know what you're talking about. His hand moved inside his jacket. 20 kilos of heroin, dropped at coordinates will provide. Simple job. And if I refuse? We know where the judge lives. Pretty little thing with the pigeon operation. My blood turned to ice. They knew about Madeline. She has nothing to do with this. She does now. Your choice, Elena. One delivery flight, or we visit your friend tonight. I thought fast. These men weren't sophisticated enough to fake the photo themselves. Someone else was pulling strings, using my identity as cover. Someone who knew my flight patterns, my equipment, my connection to Madeline. Someone like Kenneth Lewis. I need my CO pilot, I said. No passengers. Not a passenger. My navigator. The woman you just threatened. She knows pigeon racing routes better than anyone. Perfect for avoiding air traffic control. Goldteeth considered this. 1 hour. Both of you at the hangar or we start shooting. After they left, I called Madeline immediately. We have a problem. Big one. She arrived at the airport 40 minutes later, still in her business suit from a morning hearing. When I explained the situation, her face went pale. Drug runners? Isabel, we should call the police. With what evidence? A doctored photograph and death threats from people who'll disappear the moment cops show up? So we're actually going to make a heroin delivery? We're going to figure out who set us up and survive long enough to expose them. The men returned as promised, bringing duffel bags and GPS coordinates. The drop zone was 2 hours south, over rural farmland, where a balloon wouldn't attract attention. Simple exchange, Goldteeth explained. You land at these coordinates, leave the packages, take off. Ground crew handles the rest. Payment? After delivery? As we prepared for launch, Madeline whispered, "This is insane. You have better ideas?" Several, all involving federal law enforcement. These guys mentioned Lewis by name when they thought I wasn't listening. He's involved, which means normal channels are compromised. The balloon lifted into morning thermals, carrying us and 20 kilos of heroin toward whatever trap waited in the countryside. Madeline handled navigation while I managed altitude and wind direction. Tell me you have an escape plan, she said, as we climbed toward cruising altitude. Working on it. The landscape below shifted from suburban sprawl to rolling farmland dotted with tobacco barns and equipment sheds. Perfect drug trafficking territory, isolated, with multiple access roads for quick escapes. Coordinates coming up, Madeline announced. Landing zone should be that cleared field. Through binoculars, I spotted vehicles positioned around the field's perimeter. Too many for a simple pickup. This felt like an ambush. Something's wrong. What do you mean? Count the cars. This isn't a routine exchange. Before she could respond, my radio crackled with an unfamiliar voice. Balloon pilot, you're entering restricted airspace. Change course immediately. We're following delivery instructions, I replied. Negative. Land now or we open fire. That's when I realized the truth. The drug dealers weren't the real threat. They were expendable pawns in Lewis's game. He'd arranged for law enforcement to catch us red-handed, eliminating 2 troublesome women while seizing evidence of his own corruption. Madeline, I said quietly, we're not making a drug delivery, we're being set up for murder. She looked at me with those blue eyes wide with understanding. Lewis. He's cleaning house. Permanently. The radio squawked again. Final warning, land immediately. Below us, unmarked helicopters rose from concealed positions. Military precision. Federal funding. Can we outrun them? Not in a balloon. We stared at each other across the basket as the helicopters closed in, both realizing this might be our last conversation. Isabel, she said softly. If we don't survive this, don't. I need you to know. Last night, in that closet, I felt it too. The admission hung between us like a bridge neither had dared cross until now. Madeline. She moved closer, her hand finding mine among the balloon controls. Whatever happens next, I'm glad we're facing it together. The helicopters were close enough now that I could see the pilots' faces. Hold tight, I said. We're going evasive. I yanked the vent cord hard, dropping our altitude fast enough to make us both dizzy. The helicopters overshot, buying us precious seconds while they adjusted course. There. Madeline pointed toward a cluster of abandoned farm buildings. Can we make it? I pushed the balloon toward a tobacco field, praying the wind would cooperate. Behind us, rotor blades chopped closer. Brace for impact. We hit hard, the basket dragging across plowed furrows before tipping sideways. The envelope collapsed in a tangle of nylon and rope. I grabbed the drug bags in Madeline's hand, pulling her toward the nearest barn as automatic weapon fire erupted behind us. They're shooting to kill, she gasped. We dove through the barn's broken door as bullets splintered wood around the frame. Inside, rusted farm equipment provided cover while helicopters circled overhead. Radio chatter, I whispered, holding up the portable unit I'd grabbed from the basket. Federal frequency. Target down in Sector 7. Moving to contain. Roger. Orders are terminate on site. Madeline's face went white. Lewis wants us dead. We have evidence that can destroy him. Of course he wants us dead. Through gaps in the barn walls we watched tactical teams deploy from the helicopters. Military precision, federal authorization. Lewis had resources we'd never imagined. How many? Madeline asked. 8 that I can see, probably more. Night fell faster in the old barn, autumn darkness providing our only advantage. I found blankets in a storage room, musty but warm. Body heat, I said practically. We need to conserve energy. She nodded, understanding the logic even as we both recognized the intimacy of sharing covers in an abandoned building while killers hunted us outside. We huddled together on hay bales, listening to radio chatter and helicopter patrols. Her body fit against mine perfectly, shoulders tucked under my arm, blonde hair soft against my cheek. Isabel, she whispered. About what I said earlier. In the balloon. Yes. Her voice was barely audible. I meant it. I turned so we were facing each other in the darkness, her blue eyes reflecting what little moonlight filtered through cracks in the roof. This is terrible timing, I said. The worst possible. But her hand found my face, fingertips tracing my jaw with butterfly touches that made my breath catch. We might die tomorrow, she whispered. We might. Then I don't want to waste whatever time we have left pretending I don't want you. The admission broke something loose inside my chest. All the tension, the fighting, the professional antagonism had been masking something deeper, something that terrified me more than armed federal agents. Madeline. She kissed me then, soft and tentative at first, then with increasing hunger. Her lips were warm, tasting of fear and determination, and something uniquely her. I kissed back, months of suppressed attraction finally finding expression. We made love quietly in that abandoned barn, bodies intertwined under musty blankets while death circled overhead. Every touch was desperate, electric, necessary. Her skin was silk in moonlight, her sighs like prayers whispered against my throat. Afterward, we lay entwined, listening to each other breathe. I never expected this, she said softly. Fighting for our lives or falling for each other? Both. Dawn brought new dangers. Through radio intercepts we learned Lewis had arrived personally to oversee our elimination. Kenneth Lewis on scene, the tactical commander reported. Expanding search pattern. Find them, Lewis's voice crackled through static. These women have caused enough trouble. Madeline pressed against me, fully dressed but still radiating remembered warmth. We can't run forever, she said. No, but we can make them pay for hunting us. How? I showed her the radio frequency scanner I'd been monitoring. Federal tactical channels. Everything they're saying is being recorded automatically. Evidence? Of federal agents following orders to commit murder. Lewis's voice giving illegal termination commands. She smiled, fierce and beautiful in the morning light streaming through barn slats. You magnificent criminal woman. Takes one to know one. Outside, vehicles approached. Multiple engines, coordinated movement. Time to go, I said. We gathered our evidence and prepared to run again, but something had changed between us in that barn. We weren't just allies anymore, or accidental partners in survival. We were lovers fighting for a future together. And that gave us something worth dying for. Something Lewis hadn't counted on when he decided to eliminate 2 inconvenient women. "Ready?" she asked, taking my hand. "With you? For anything." We slipped out the back as tactical teams breached the front, running toward whatever came next. Together. We ran through tobacco fields for 3 hours before finding the old farmhouse. Madeline recognized the weathered structure immediately, her childhood home, abandoned after her father's death 5 years ago. "Hide here?" I panted. No choice. The house sat isolated among overgrown fields, its windows boarded, paint peeling from neglect. We slipped through the back door into rooms that smelled of dust and memories. Madeline moved through the kitchen like a ghost visiting her past, touching countertops and cabinet handles with reverent fingers. "Dad built this kitchen for Mom," she said quietly. "Every board, every nail." Family photographs lined the mantelpiece. A younger Madeline with her parents, her father in his pilot uniform, racing pigeons filling the background of outdoor shots. "Tell me about him," I said. "James Scott. Commercial pilot for 30 years, never had an accident until the day Lewis needed one." Her voice carried old pain. "He taught me everything about aviation safety because he truly believed proper procedures save lives." I studied a photograph of her father standing beside a small plane, completely different from the reckless pilot Lewis had painted in his investigation report. "That's why you were so harsh with me initially. I saw Dad's caution in your flight logs. But I also saw what happened to him when someone decided his safety record was inconvenient." A pickup truck rumbled up the driveway. We tensed until a familiar voice called out, "Maddie? You in there?" "Antonio," she breathed with relief. Her brother entered through the front door, tall, dark-haired, with the same blue eyes as Madeline. He took one look at our bedraggled appearance, and his expression hardened. "What kind of trouble are you in?" "Federal trouble," I said. "The dangerous kind." Antonio Scott was 38 and built like someone who worked with his hands for a living. When Madeline explained our situation, his face cycled through disbelief, anger, and protective fury. "Lewis killed Dad? Covered up his murder, same thing. And now he's hunting you both?" With federal authorization, I confirmed. Antonio studied me with unconcealed suspicion. "You're the balloon pilot Maddie complained about." "Former complaints," Madeline said quickly. "We're partners now." Something in her tone made Antonio's eyebrows rise. His gaze moved between us, noting things siblings notice, how we stood closer than necessary, how our eyes found each other during conversation. "Partners," he repeated slowly. "Yes. The kind that share blankets?" Madeline flushed. "Antonio. Relax, sis. About time you found someone worth fighting for." He turned to me. "But if you get her killed, I'll hunt you through whatever afterlife exists." "Fair enough." He helped us organize the evidence we'd gathered. Lewis's files, the recorded radio transmissions, documentation of federal agents following illegal termination orders. "This proves everything," Antonio said. "But who do you trust with it?" "Inspector General's office, maybe FBI Internal Affairs," I suggested. "Assuming they're not compromised too." Through the boarded windows, we spotted vehicles approaching along the county road. Black SUVs, government plates. "They found us," Madeline whispered. Antonio grabbed a rifle from behind the door. "Go out the back. I'll slow them down." "We're not leaving you." "You're not staying to get caught." He checked the rifle's action. "This is family property. I have rights here they don't." Madeline kissed his cheek. "Be careful. You too. Both of you." We slipped out through the kitchen while Antonio positioned himself on the front porch. His voice carried across the yard as federal agents deployed around the house. "This is private property. State your business. We're looking for 2 fugitives. Isabel Cooper and Madeline Scott. Haven't seen them." Through the woods behind the house, we could hear negotiation becoming confrontation. Antonio was buying us time with his life. "We have to help him," Madeline said. "We help him by staying alive long enough to expose Lewis." She nodded reluctantly, understanding the brutal logic of survival. We moved through pine forest toward the county road, carrying evidence that could bring down a corrupt federal official if we lived long enough to deliver it. Behind us, gunshots echoed through the trees. Madeline stumbled, her composure finally cracking. "Antonio." I caught her, held her steady. He's smart and he's armed. He'll be okay. You don't know that. I know he loves you enough to sacrifice everything protecting you. Don't make that sacrifice meaningless. She straightened, wiping her eyes. When she looked at me, I saw steel beneath the tears. Lewis ends tonight. How? Tomorrow's the regional balloon festival. He'll be there for the aviation safety presentation. Public appearance, media coverage, perfect venue for exposing corruption. That's also where he'll have maximum security. Then we'd better be smarter than his security. We reached the county road as sirens wailed in the distance. Emergency response vehicles racing toward the Scott family home. I took Madeline's hand. Her fingers were cold but steady. Together? I asked. Always. We disappeared into the North Carolina night, two women with evidence of federal corruption and nothing left to lose except each other. The most dangerous combination in the world. The Greensboro Balloon Festival filled Meadowbrook Park with colored nylon and excited crowds. Families wandered between vendor stalls while pilots prepared for the evening launch. Perfect cover for two fugitives with federal evidence. Lewis stood on the main stage, addressing news cameras about aviation safety initiatives. Same slick smile, same bureaucratic charm that had fooled oversight committees for years. Someone should kill that bastard, Madeline muttered from behind sunglasses and a baseball cap. Someone's going to destroy him. More permanently. We'd spent the night preparing. Madeline's racing pigeons were positioned around the festival grounds, each bird carrying copies of Lewis's incriminating files. Modern technology meeting ancient navigation instincts. Backup plan? I asked. If this goes wrong, every major news outlet gets evidence packages by pigeon delivery. The beauty of her strategy impressed me. Racing pigeons were trained to return home regardless of weather, predators, or interference. Natural satellites that couldn't be hacked or intercepted. Antonio appeared beside us, his arm in a sling, but otherwise unharmed. Told you I'd be okay. Madeline hugged him carefully. How did you escape? Federal agents aren't trained for Carolina backwoods warfare. Dad taught me those forests before he taught you bird breeding. Lewis finished his presentation to polite applause. As he stepped down from the stage, we moved into position. Kenneth Lewis, I called loudly enough for media microphones to pick up. He turned, his face shifting from political smile to genuine alarm when he recognized us. Miss Cooper, Miss Scott. I thought you were missing. Missing from your assassination attempt, you mean? Cameras swiveled toward us. Festival crowds gathered, sensing drama. I'm afraid I don't understand. Madeline stepped forward, holding up manila folders. Federal Aviation Authority corruption, murder cover-ups, drug trafficking facilitation. These women are fugitives, Lewis announced to the cameras. Wanted for narcotics trafficking and federal crimes. Then explain these. I activated the portable speaker we'd positioned earlier. Lewis's voice filled the park through amplified radio recordings. Find them. These women have caused enough trouble. Orders are terminate on site. Kenneth Lewis on scene. Expanding search pattern. The crowd murmured as Lewis's recorded voice contradicted his public denials. Media reporters began asking sharp questions. This is doctored audio, Lewis claimed. But his composure was cracking. Explain the files then. Madeline began reading from his secret documents. James Scott crash investigation, original evidence suppressed, witness testimony altered, mechanical sabotage covered up. That investigation was thoroughly reviewed. By you. The same person who took bribes to falsify the results. Lewis's security detail moved closer, but festival crowds and media attention made violence impossible. Too many witnesses, too many cameras. You have no proof of bribery. I pulled out bank records we'd found in his office files, offshore accounts, payments from aviation contractors, dates matching suspicious investigation rulings. The evidence was overwhelming, delivered in front of rolling cameras and growing crowds. Lewis's political career was ending in real time. Sir, one of his security agents whispered urgently, we need to leave. But Madeline wasn't finished. She released her racing pigeons all at once, dozens of birds carrying document packages toward predetermined coordinates. Insurance, she announced to the crowd. Every major news outlet, FBI field office, and inspector general location now has copies of this evidence. Lewis lunged forward, desperation overriding political calculation. Stop those birds. His security agents actually drew weapons, pointing them at racing pigeons while media cameras recorded their insanity. You're going to shoot birds in front of kindergarten classes? I asked incredulously. The absurdity broke whatever remaining credibility Lewis possessed. Federal official threatening wildlife during a family festival, caught on live television. That night, after Lewis's arrest and the media circus, we found ourselves alone in my balloon basket. I'd inflated it for a peaceful evening flight away from crowds and cameras and federal investigations. It's over, Madeline said, her head resting on my shoulder as we drifted above Greensboro's lights. The legal parts anyway. What about the other parts? I turned to face her in the basket's confined space. Moonlight caught her blonde hair, made her blue eyes luminous. Which other parts? You know which parts. She kissed me then, soft and thorough, her hands finding the places that made me gasp. We made love in that balloon basket, suspended between earth and stars, celebrating survival and justice and the unexpected love that had grown from conflict. Her body moved against mine with desperate tenderness, as if we were still fighting for our lives, but together now, always together. I love you, she whispered against my throat. I love you too. Below us, Greensboro spread in patterns of light, while racing pigeons found their way home through darkness, carrying proof that two women had changed everything. The way love always does. Quietly, completely, forever. 6 months after Kenneth Lewis began serving his 15-year federal sentence, I stood in my hangar watching Madeline release racing pigeons for their morning training flight. The birds circled once before heading northeast, their natural compass unerring as her love for them. Beautiful, I said, meaning both the pigeons and their handler. They're finally trusting me completely again. Took time to rebuild their confidence after everything we went through. The parallel wasn't lost on either of us. Trust, once shattered by conflict and near-death experiences, required patience to restore. My balloon operation had recovered quickly. Federal exoneration brought new customers eager to fly with the pilot who exposed FAA corruption. Ironic how near destruction had led to business success. Madeline's judging career flourished too. Racing pigeon associations nationwide requested her expertise, particularly in safety protocols and fraud prevention. She'd become the face of ethical competition standards. Ready for this afternoon? She asked, checking her watch. County Fair demonstration? I've been ready for weeks. The joint balloon and pigeon exhibition was my idea, showing how different aviation disciplines could work together instead of fighting territorial battles. Symbolic closure for our story. We drove to the fairgrounds in comfortable silence, her hand resting on my thigh while I navigated traffic. Simple intimacy that still made my pulse quicken after months together. The demonstration drew hundreds of spectators. I began inflating my balloon while Madeline prepared her pigeons for synchronized release. Children pressed against safety barriers, their faces bright with excitement. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer called, aviation harmony in action. My balloon lifted as her pigeons launched, both ascending into cloudless September sky. The crowd cheered as birds circled my basket, their formation flight creating natural poetry above the fairgrounds. From my elevated position, I could see Madeline directing ground operations with professional precision, blonde hair shining in afternoon sunlight, her movements graceful and purposeful. Still the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. The pigeons completed their demonstration lap and headed home while I guided the balloon back to Earth. Perfect execution, just like we'd planned. During the landing, something glinted on Madeline's left hand. When I climbed out of the basket, she was standing unusually close, her blue eyes bright with nervous excitement. What's that? I asked, pointing to her ring finger. This? She held up her hand, showing a simple gold band. Just something I picked up today. My heart stopped. Madeline. Isabel Cooper, she said formally. You magnificent, criminal, impossible woman who changed my entire life. The crowd fell silent, sensing something momentous. Will you marry me? The question hung in the air like a perfectly balanced balloon, suspended between hope and terror and absolute certainty. Yes. She slipped a matching ring onto my finger while hundreds of strangers applauded our engagement. The gold felt warm, solid, permanent against my skin. I love you, she whispered, pulling me close. I love you too. We kissed while racing pigeons circled overhead. their return flight creating a living wedding arch against the Carolina sky. The crowd cheered louder, children shouting with delight at the fairy tale ending. Later that evening, as sunset painted the horizon in shades of rose and gold, we stood together in my balloon basket for a private celebration flight. The earth dropped away beneath us, leaving only sky and starlight and each other. "Think we'll make it?" she asked, her head resting on my shoulder. "Make what?" "Happily ever after." I considered the question seriously. We'd survived federal assassination attempts, exposed corruption, rebuilt our careers, and discovered love in the aftermath of professional warfare. We've made it this far. True. Below us, Greensboro spread in familiar patterns of light. The same city where we'd first met in model UN debates, where we'd fought territorial battles over airspace, where we'd fallen in love despite ourselves, where her racing pigeons were roosting peacefully in their loft, and my balloon equipment waited patiently for tomorrow's adventures. "Besides," I said, kissing the top of her head, "we're both too stubborn to quit now." She laughed, the sound carrying across the night air like a promise. Forever stubborn. Forever together. The balloon drifted higher, carrying us toward whatever came next. Two women who'd found each other through conflict, survived through trust, and chosen love over every safer alternative. In the distance, a lone racing pigeon traced lazy circles in the starlight, finding its way home through darkness. Just like we had.